Hello and welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for the week of December 8th through the 14th. How was the full moon in Gemini? How is Mercury going direct? Saturn going direct this week? Neptune is going direct. And like I've mentioned in the weekly forecast and also the monthly forecast with Stephanie Campos, we actually got to preview 2026. December was going to be a mixed bag. And, I'm going to tell you like it is because I think there are things in life where we have to just focus on what we can control and let the universe do the rest because there's so much we cannot control. And I think December is one of those months. It's a lot of working with the energies that are maybe more challenging. There's going to be a lot of epiphanies, a lot of revelations. And before we get into the week, though, I just want to share some of the things I noticed last week in the astrology and the news and how they align and how, um, I really want to show you how astrology is just pattern recognition and cycles, and you can really do research and see how everything's connected. And yeah, so let's get into it. So December 2nd, Diddy The Reckoning, which is the Diddy documentary, came out on Netflix. It's so interesting because growing up, he was known to me as Puff Daddy, Puffy, and oh my gosh, I didn't watch the documentary, but what I found interesting was that 50 Cent, his longtime arch nemesis, 50 Cent and Diddy they have had beef for over 20 years, which I think is interesting. 50 Cent was one of the executive producers on this documentary because he was able to obtain never before seen footage of Diddy in the moments before he was arrested in 2024. And so obviously I looked at both of their charts. Both Diddy and 50 Cent, Curtis, I forget his last name, they don't have time charts. So I'm really just looking at their aspects in their the aspects between their planets in their chart. So we don't know their rising sign and we don't know the planets in the houses. But I did think it was interesting that Diddy has his North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo, and he has a Virgo moon. He has a Scorpio sun and Mercury. So Diddy is going through his nodal return, and Diddy's first indictment was on September 16th, 2024, so last year, and it was 2 days before a lunar eclipse in Pisces at 28 degrees. So that first eclipse, was it the first eclipse? But there was his story and how he's getting essentially, his karmic retribution in during his nodal return with the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo. It is very telling of the cycles of his life. And 50 Cent himself he's a Cancer sun, Saturn in Cancer. He has a Gemini moon. He has his Mercury in Gemini. And so, what I think is interesting was one of the signatures of that full moon in Gemini that happened on December 5th was that the full moon in Gemini, was exactly at the bends. It was exactly at 13 degrees and it was square the nodes. So the North Node right now is in Pisces and the South Node is in Virgo. And so 50 Cent's Gemini moon is at the bends to Diddy's nodes. That signature of the full moon is embedded in the synastry between 50 Cent and Diddy. And I just think it's interesting because 50 Cent being a Cancer sun and Saturn in Cancer, his Saturn is in its detriment and its exile. He played the long game of collecting these receipts. And I didn't realize how petty Gemini moons can be. So I do think it's interesting that at the full moon in Gemini, this documentary comes out. So that was interesting. And I guess we'll see. I'm gonna watch the documentary, but I just, Yeah, I guess I've grown up with Diddy, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, whatever you want to call him. He was the founder of Bad Boy Entertainment, obviously Biggie, Notorious B.I.G., Mace, 112, all these all these artists and their soundtrack. This was the soundtrack of my high school years, and for me, it's very also Saturn return. These were the late 90s when I was in high school, and I just like these songs bring me back to that time. I still remember when Biggie was unalived and when Tupac was unalived, and it just seemed like such a historical moment in hip hop culture that it's interesting now to see all of it coming out. Um, anyway, I just wanted to share that little tidbit with you. On December 5th, so this was at the new moon, full moon in Gemini, um, Netflix bought out Warner Brothers for $83 billion, which is also bringing up some like antitrust laws and like monopolies, but I guess that doesn't matter right now. We're in late stage capitalism. But what I did find was interesting is that when Netflix was first founded, see, I remember this too. This is how like old I am. It was first released August 29th, 1997 at a solar eclipse in Virgo. Um, and there was a solar eclipse in Virgo on September 1st, 1997. And at this time, it was a DVD mail-in service. Do you remember that? You would like order the DVD on Netflix and then they would mail it to you. That's how it first started. So Netflix is connected to these nodes as well. However, that was a nodal reversal. The North Node was in Virgo and the South Node was in Pisces. And then January 16th, 2007, Netflix started their streaming service, and the North Node was in Pisces and the South Node was in Virgo. So technically, at the time that Netflix now buys out Warner Brothers, they are going through their nodal return as well. And when Netflix was founded, Saturn was in Aries. So next year, Netflix is going to go through its Saturn return. Such interesting stuff, right? And you can track these with any company. Like when a company is founded, they have a natal chart too. So if you own your business or if you start at a company, that moment that you start or you launch it or you announce something, that is the birth chart of your company. And so throughout these cycles, like let's say a nodal return or a Saturn return if your company lasts that long. Or like my company, for example, is going through its Saturn Jupiter square. That's why it's been challenging to like keep it going and keep it moving. And I've had to be very disciplined and Saturnian about it. But yeah, so I find it interesting now as Netflix is going through its Saturn return, its beginning stages of its Saturn return, because Saturn was in Aries shortly in the summertime, right? And it's going through its nodal reversal since it started streaming. It's now changing into this, like, I don't know, this monopoly on content. And I think it's interesting too because when Netflix first started streaming, they would make these very unique shows and movies. Do you remember when that first started happening in 2007? We would not watch cable TV or like regular TV to go see what Netflix was playing because they were creating original content. And now it just seems like they're just streaming old movies and stuff that we've already seen. So it will be interesting to see. I keep saying interesting. It will be interesting to see what happens during Netflix's Saturn return, Saturn in Aries, to see if we'll get any interesting content out of this deal. I personally don't think this is going to be this is late stage capitalism and the fact that they just keep raising the price of Netflix without creating interesting content. I think when it first came out, it was like $7.99, right, per month, and now it's $16.99 or something crazy like that. So we shall see. And then the last thing I noticed was that Luigi Mangione case, there's a new status update. It might be thrown out because the police did not have a proper search warrant before searching his bag at McDonald's. And also, they did not read him his Miranda rights. So, this happened after Mercury and Saturn first stationed direct. And also, Luigi was arrested last year. Remember, last year was when Mars stationed to go retrograde, and it was the martial law that happened in Korea. It was the shooting and the unaliving of the CEO of the United Healthcare, and then Luigi Mangione was one of their prime suspects. Like all of these news happened around the same time. But last year, when he was arrested, it was a Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, which is related to this retrograde because Mercury went between Sagittarius and Scorpio. So, very, very interesting news stories that came out last week. And we shall see once Mercury fully finishes its post shadow, we shall see the conclusion of all of the Mercury retrograde stories. So this week is a mixed bag. I'm not gonna lie. Monday, December 8th, we start off in a rough footing with Mars in Sagittarius square to Saturn in Pisces at 25 degrees. So let's break it down. We always want to first start with the characteristics of the planets involved. So, Mars and Saturn in astrology are the two malefics. So, Mars is the planet of conflict, of war, of anger. It's like that impulse to act, right? It's a fiery, hot planet. So, it's like the temper. And it is that impulse to do something. We always need Mars in our life. Otherwise, we literally do nothing and sit on the couch. And Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign ruled by Jupiter. It does speak about our belief systems, learning, traveling, discovering, and it is a fire sign. So Mars in Sagittarius is a very courageous placement. It's very brave. It's like, I'm going to act because I really believe in this thing. I'm going to do this thing because I really have so much faith and promise for the future. It, I guess, I don't like to say negative, positive, good or bad because astrology at the end of the day, like everything in life, is light and dark. The negative placement for this is like a January 6th, right? Like I'm going to storm the Capitol because I believe in white supremacy or I believe in our right to exist here and who cares about everybody else. It has this very dogmatic, very preachy kind of energy and creating conflicts because of those belief systems. Saturn is a cold and detached planet, and its significations are borders, structure, discipline. It is the planet of no. So when Mars is like, I'm gonna go after this thing, Saturn's kind of like, we gotta stop you there, buddy. This isn't gonna go anywhere. Saturn is also elders, tradition. It is the status quo, it is hierarchical. Pisces is a mutable, it is a mutable water sign ruled by Jupiter too. So Jupiter right now, which rules Mars and Saturn, is retrograde in Cancer, which is about care, which is about nationalism. So squares, which is the aspect, is a 90-degree angle. It is the nature of Mars. It is a conflict aspect. And squares happen in signs of the same modality. So Sagittarius and Pisces are both mutable signs. So if you have mutable placements in and around 20 to 29 degrees, so the other mutable signs are Gemini. This includes Gemini, Pisces, Sagittarius, and Virgo, if you have placements in and around 20 to 29 degrees, you are really going to feel this square. So let's say you have your ascendant at 25 degrees of Virgo, you're going to feel this square by square to you. And so when the two malefics come together in a square, this is like these two areas of your life. And when we're talking about the Pisces whole sign area of your life, which has been going through some renovation, has been going through some restructuring with Saturn there since 2023. Neptune, like I mentioned, is going to go direct in 2 days later at 29 degrees. Neptune has been here for 14 years since 2011. You've been experiencing eclipses here for the last like 2 years. So your Pisces house has been going through some changes, has been going through some of the brunt of this like growth edge you've been going through. And Sagittarius, you just had a retrograde, Mercury retrograde go through here. And now Mars is kind of asking you to take some action in this area of your life. And now we're at this point where Mars is meeting Saturn at this very contentious aspect and a square. There's some conflict here. Okay, so let's say, for example, you're a Sagittarius rising. This is you. You feel compelled to act in some way. You feel compelled to do something in some way. And then your Pisces house with Saturn there is your fourth house of family, home, parents. And so you might come into conflict with them over belief systems, over your faith, over like, maybe you're having a conflict of the ways in which you should be participating in this area of your life. You know, maybe your family members are like, we don't really support you in this way. So you're at this like crossroads here. So that's how you could be experiencing this square in your personal life. And ultimately, what I say with squares is like, to lean into them when you can. There should not be at this point in the year of 2025 to be disassociating, to be avoidant, because we need to grow through conflict. And so many people are conflict avoidant. I would say 90% of people are conflict avoidant. And and unfortunately, it takes another mature person who is also not conflict avoidant, who is willing to sit with uncomfortable feelings so that you can both work through this conflict, right? And again, we're not there as a collective, we're not there as a people, but I would try your best to communicate as clearly as possible. Mercury is now direct. I would try your best to try to come from a place of not continuing harm. And, you know, when you are in this victim oppressor dynamic, to make sure that you are taking care of yourself, you are having boundaries. So this might be a situation where you could be the Saturnian influence. You could be saying, I need to have a boundary here. I can't continue to have this type of abuse. I can't keep having these kinds of attacks on me, you know? So you might be invoking that Saturnian influence and saying that. You might be walking away from something ultimately because Mars is in the nature of severing, and so is Saturn. Saturn is like, enough is enough. I'm not going to take this anymore. So this could be like that crossroads moment where you decide to walk away from something and you've endured enough. Um, Saturn is the planet of commitment and endurance and steadfastness. And Mars is like maybe the opposite of that energy. Mars is like, goodbye. I'm gonna like let this go, you know? So also personally in your own life, this could just be this like check-in with yourself of like recommitting to something, of saying, okay, we're at this challenging moment in our lives. Things are not going the way we plan, but I'm going to continue to commit to this, Saturn. So there's different ways to experience this aspect, but like I said, depending on where you are in your life and also where these planets are transiting in your life currently, you could be experiencing this as I'm going to recommit and I'm going to not quit on this thing, even though I want to quit. I want to like put all of my want to put all of my cards down. I want to just, release all of this tension and weight, and I want to just be set free. But for other people, it is that Saturnian like boundary. I'm not going to take this anymore. Collectively in the world, the United States is a Sagittarius rising, and so this is about the United States, like, you know, the example that's coming up in my mind is the attacks on the Venezuelan boats, for example. Mars and Sagittarius is I'm going to shoot these boats, Saturn and Pisces, the water, right? And by the way, these are war crimes. They have not even tried these people on the boat. They're just shooting them down and saying it's a drug trafficking thing. And the United States is making like excuses for it, but they're technically a war crime. So this is one example of how this can show up in our collective consciousness, like I said. But yeah, so just be mindful of December 8th, Monday, and how you are engaging with this energy. Be mindful of your energy and where you choose to invest it. Is it worth the fight? Is it worth your time? Is this worth you getting all riled up about, you know? In some cases, like 50 Cent thought it was worth his time to be petty and collect all the receipts and create a documentary. Like for him, it was personal. I don't really know the backstory of that. I think their beef started 20 years ago. I know 50 Cent has come out and said several times that Puff Daddy, Sean Combs was responsible for the murder and unaliving of Biggie and Tupac. So maybe that's where the beef started. So if anybody knows, let me know. But then there's other instances where it's just not worth it, and it's time to walk away. On December 10th, Mercury in Scorpio will oppose Uranus retrograde in Taurus at 28 degrees. And so you want to think back to November 19th, in and around, I think this was the new moon in Scorpio, where Mercury was retrograde and it was opposing Uranus in Taurus at 29 degrees. So you're going to think back to that timeline, right? Maybe you discovered something shocking. You heard news that was a secret, or you decided to reveal something at that time. So now that Mercury is going direct, we're revisiting whatever happened in and around that time. This was around the time when, wasn't this around the time with the Louvre jewel heist? I remember that very, very clearly because I did the chart for that, and Mercury and Mars and Scorpio were rising in the horizon. So just think back to that time because those news stories that were kind of popping off at that time are going to be revisited again. But if you don't remember, like personally, when Mercury opposes Uranus, you could hear some surprising news. You could, yeah, something that's connected to that timeline, though. The same day, Neptune stations direct at 29 degrees in Pisces for the last time in our lives. And Neptune is at the anaretic degree. Okay, so do some reflection of the last 14 years since 2011 was the first time Neptune entered your Pisces whole sign house. So look at your Pisces house. It's been going through a lot, you know? Um, and Neptune is the planet of our imagination and dreams. It is the fog. It is the liminal space. It is mysticism, spirituality, the ocean, the consciousness that unites us all. It's film, it's photography, it's our reality. And once we choose not to believe in that reality, that's when Neptune starts to clear. And so I do think it's interesting that the United States Sibley chart has Neptune in Virgo. And so this Neptune transit throughout Pisces was opposing the United States natal Neptune. And I think that had a lot to do with a lot of people's belief in the American dream to kind of pop, that illusion of, oh, American exceptionalism, we are the best. When somebody, there's like memes that say, like, the United States is a third world country with the Gucci belt, because we're fed all of this propaganda and marketing of how great we are, but then we don't have a national railroad system. And if you've traveled, if you're fortunate enough to have traveled outside the US and you've gone to like Europe, they have a very nice railroad system. So does Japan and Korea. And you're just like, whoa, like it's crazy. So I do think that the American dream, American exceptionalism, US imperialism has all really become unveiled in the last couple of years. And there's other transits, obviously, that speak to that, right? Like the USA's Pluto return, Uranus going into Gemini, which is the USA's Gemini return. So all of these are working in tandem for us here in the United States of America to really understand our place in the world and how it's become an empire in the last 250 years and how we are, it's up to us to wake up and our individual healing because we can't manifest a new world built off the trauma that built the old world. So it's important to have this Neptunian like defogging, the unveiling of all of this mysticism and the myth and lore around the United States. Because if you really read history, it's always been like this. The United States was founded on the genocide of the indigenous people of Turtle Island and chattel slavery. So I think it's interesting that so many liberals, quote unquote, will say, oh, we are living in unprecedented times. And meanwhile, like, if you are a kid of immigrants or you're a refugee or you're a migrant that has come here, you've come here because the United States has bombed your motherlands. So I didn't mean to take all of this into like a geopolitical conversation, but I do think it's important to understand, at a collective level, what all of these outer planet transits mean. And Neptune being at its last degree of Pisces. And when the last time Neptune was in Pisces was when Neptune was discovered. Neptune was discovered. And if you're interested in more about Neptune, I did a whole episode about Neptune with Camille Michelle Gray. We're really proud of that episode and how to like redefine Neptune for a lot of people. On December 11th, Venus and Sagittarius will be at the bends. So again, this is when a planet is square to the nodes. And this was very reminiscent of the full moon because it's at the full moon degree of Gemini that happened earlier in the month on December 5th. But this was a north node bending, and now Venus in Sagittarius is at the south node bending. So what this feels like to me is like you are at a maybe crossroads or there's some tension between you and your relationships. Venus is the planet of attraction, beauty, love, yes, all of the wonderful things. It is the planet of our unions, our bonds, our values. And everything I said about Sagittarius when I was delineating Mars and Sagittarius is true for Venus, except Venus is, yin, feminine energy. Mars is yang, masculine energy. So this is about Venus and Sagittarius people are people who are interested in like different cultures, are interested in learning, higher learning, investing in studying about like philosophy and spirituality. And they usually are attracted to people who are interested in these topics. So Venus and Sagittarius people oftentimes date and fall in love with people who are maybe not of their ethnicity, people who they meet while they travel, for example. And It's at the bend. So the north node is in Pisces and the south node is in Virgo. The north node is ruled by Jupiter. The south node is ruled by Mercury. And these nodes are also about spirituality, right? And about and healing and embodying all of this like wisdom of the North Node into our physical vessels, the South Node in Virgo. So I do think at this time, December 11th, you want to definitely mark this on your calendar because it seems like a pretty active day astrologically. Because on the same day, this is the third quarter moon in Virgo, so the moon in Virgo will also be going through around the South Node, and so I think a lot of people on this day are going to look around at their relationships and kind of do an audit. Very Virgo moon, like critical eye, very nitpicky and judgmental, and be like, do I want to be in these relationships with these people? Because like I don't know if I can I can any longer be surrounded by people who are not speaking up or people who believe even something as simple as people who are like doom and gloom, that's like the opposite of Sagittarius energy. Sagittarius energy is very optimistic. It's very like anything is possible, especially Venus in Sagittarius. And so I could see people around this time doing that kind of audit. On the same day, so this is all December 11th, Mercury in Scorpio will trine Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees. So I love this transit because trines are in the nature of Jupiter. They make things happen, they expand things. Mercury in Scorpio is, I always say, the most nonverbal Mercury. This is about digging deep, doing a lot of deep research, finding the hidden clues. It's like looking where most people wouldn't look. It's going beneath the surface of things. And then again, Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees. And I just want to say this transit or this aspect reminds me that there are different types of learning and communication. So most people think that communication is only verbal, right? Like storytelling through speaking or storytelling through the auditory medium. However, as a neurodivergent person, I was telling my friend about vibes and energy and how you could feel things and people's intentions without them even telling you. You know what I mean? Like, and this is Mercury in Scorpio, trine Neptune in Pisces. This is like picking up on vibration, picking up on subtle, like, changes in people's energy and knowing what that is. So I was having a conversation with one of my friends and he was asking me about someone who he's interested in romantically. And I'm like, yeah, but there are all sorts of messages that are being transmitted that aren't verbal. So even if she's not like even if y'all aren't expressing your intentions with each other or you're like literally just saying, I like you, you can feel when someone likes you because energy is, it's reciprocal. Not reciprocal like you like me, I like you, but there is something at the other end of that energy exchange. So when you like somebody, you send off energy and vibes to that person and it lands on them. And I feel like we've missed that somehow. Because I remember dating and growing up when there was no social media, so you couldn't like look up a person's, what they're interested in and all these things. And you had to simply go off on vibes. And you had to just at some point be honest with your feelings and be like, I like you. Do you like me? But somehow we've lost that plot. And so Mercury in Scorpio, trine Neptune and Pisces is the vibes. It's like going off on vibes and trusting those vibes, okay? And then later on in the day, Mercury will enter Sagittarius. So think back to October 29th when Mercury first entered into Sagittarius, and we are still in the post shadow. And just to remind you that Mercury is in its detriment or exile in the sign of Sagittarius. So oftentimes, Mercury in its domicile in its home sign of Gemini and Virgo. Mercury is very logical. Mercury is very intellectual, likes to pay attention to the data, pay attention to the detail. But when Mercury is in Sagittarius, this is like very big ideas, big picture, right? Um, Mercury in Gemini people tend to be very focused on the little things. When Mercury is in Sagittarius, they tend to be focused on like the big things, like I believe that everybody and the whole world, whereas Mercury in Gemini is this little sample size of people might think this. You know what I mean? So that's just a little reminder of what Mercury in Sagittarius is. And then on December 13th, Mercury in Sagittarius will sextile Pluto in Aquarius at 2 degrees. This is a really lovely transit. Sextiles are 60-degree angles between two supportive elements. So you need air to build up on fire. So Mercury in Sagittarius is like, it is sort of preachy. It's like, let's get the word out. Let's spread optimism. Let's have faith in the bigger picture, right? Which can be helpful in some ways, which is why I suggest on December 13th, this is a good day to do some community organizing, to do a speech, perhaps where you need to galvanize people and inject some faith back into people, inject some optimism into people. This is a great day to do something on social media, like share something that you've been working on, a passion project, for example. But then Mercury and Sagittarius, I mean, hopefully you have gone through the retrograde, but it can also be very preachy and like that might annoy some people. Um, so for example, Mercury and Sagittarius could be that, oh my God, what does my mom call Jehovah's Witness? She's so funny. She's an immigrant, so she makes up words. Um, that could be like Jehovah's Witness at your door. That's very Mercury and Sag. It's like, I'm going to evangelize to you and unsolicited. Um, Mercury and Sagittarius is like these blanket statements that you should believe something without evidence, that kind of thing. December 14th, Mars in Sagittarius will square Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees. So we begin the week with a hard aspect between Mars and Saturn. And now at the end of the week, which is a Sunday, Mars will make a hard aspect to Neptune in Pisces. So whereas Mars square Saturn is like you've come to like a dead end, like we cannot move forward. You either have to pivot or do something different or compromise or just like completely abandon ship altogether. However, Neptune is more like this foggy liminal space. And Mars has this like also breaking free energy. Mars and Uranus have that in common. It's like this liberation, like I'm breaking free out of the matrix. That's what Mars and Sagittarius square Neptune and Pisces at 29 degrees gives for me. It's like I'm taking the red pill, I'm breaking out of this matrix, I'm breaking out of the United States of America. I'm moving. Oh, another thing that happened last week too is that they're trying to pass a bill. The Trump administration is trying to pass a bill to not allow U.S. citizens to have dual citizenship. This is very Mars and Sagittarius square Saturn and then square Neptune. It's like we're keeping you here. We're keeping you within our borders. And then Mars and Sagittarius square Neptune is like, oh no, you're not. Like I'm breaking free out of here. I'm starting a new dream somewhere else. Um, so it's not as harsh, I would say, because Neptune is also an outer planet. Um, I think Mars and Sagittarius and Neptune and Pisces, because also like I'm just thinking like that saying Delulu is the Solulu. That's very Neptune and Pisces. I feel like Mars and Sagittarius could be breaking people's Delulu a little bit. Um, and maybe not in a positive way, because I do believe one of the key things for us as people of like this timeline, anybody of this timeline, but specifically if you are a United States citizen, which a lot of my followers, a lot of my subscribers are, we need a level of delulu in order for us to dream up a reality that is different from this one. Because we are at like the extinction burst of empire, we are at like the crux of colonialism. Like, is the United States going to continue colonialism or not? That is where we are. We are at late stage capitalism. So, what is the next thing after that when empire dies? Like, what are we imagining when we think of liberation, when we think of freedom for all? And being radical, actually, what that means is we just want everybody to be free. We don't want anybody to be oppressed. Okay. I don't think that's controversial, but whatever. And so you have to be Delulu. You have to imagine outside of these oppressive systems. So I think what might happen is, on the one hand, Mars and Sagittarius can pop that kind of like Delulu, Delulu state. It could just be like, oh, we really have to get real. We have to start taking action towards these things. But my hope is that it doesn't necessarily make people less Delulu, but take action on the Delulu. Because if we just allow them to be the imagination to the dream, that's all it's gonna end up being is just a dream. What makes a dream come true is to take action steps towards it, which is what Mars does. So that is the astrology forecast for the week of December 8th through the 14th. Like I said, I'm gonna be honest with you. The rest of December is a little crunchy because we're gonna continue to have these squares between your Sagittarius area of your life and your Pisces area of your life. So if you are a mutable rising sign like Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, these squares are happening in two of your angular houses. So if you are a Gemini rising, your Pisces house is your 10th house. Am I doing the math correctly? Your Sagittarius is your 7th house. So it's your partnership house and your one-on-one relationships and your career sector. If you are a Virgo rising, this is your home, the 4th house, and your 7th house of Pisces, your one-on-one relationships, right? So it's your home and your partnership, your relationships are in conflict with each other. If you are a Sag rising, like moi, this is you versus your family versus your home life. If you're a Pisces rising, this is your 10th house of Sagittarius and you, Pisces, right? So just hang in there is what I'm trying to say. Because we are being set up for something that we've been planting seeds on, something that we've been dreaming up to come into fruition in 2026. So I will see you next week. Bye.